everybody. It's Pete Cossaboon here with the Positive Vibe Show from Project Positive Change. I'm so excited today. I'm actually joined by two other visionaries, Caroline Palmy and Allison Sara Reiner, here on the Positive Vibe Show. Today we're going to be talking about people pleasers. So I'm really excited. This is actually going to be a show probably in 4 segments. If anybody knows about my creative work, it always tends to, come out however it comes out perfectly. So we're going to be discussing the idea of people pleasers and people pleasing. And the first subject we're really going to talk about is why we do it. So I'm going to let my co-hosts, my visionaries here kind of introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into it. Caroline, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I live here in beautiful Switzerland. I'm a heart flow healer, so I help my clients open the doors to their heart so they can get back into the flow of love, because love is our true essence. I went through a divorce. We split up about 10 years ago, and just about 3 months into the separation, I woke up in my living room and had no idea who I was anymore. I realized for the last 20 years I was with that husband. I was just trying to please him so much, and I lost myself completely. So I'm a recovering doormat now.
I love it. Allison, how about you? Tell us about yourself.
Who am I? So I'm Allison Reiner, as you said, and I'm your Loved Again coach, and I work with women who are contemplating divorce. So 10 years ago, Caroline would have been my ideal client. A lot of, the reason I do it is because I went through a very difficult period in my own marriage, and that led me to a huge long path of personal development. I'm still on it now. Hopefully I'll continue to be on it for a very, very long time. And one of the things that came up for me very, very clearly was I had no idea who I was, not just in 20 years, but in my whole life, because I was conditioned from a very early age to say yes and to be a very good girl, not to ask questions, not to rock the boat, just to do the right thing, as opposed as decided by, at that time, my mother. But then, as time went on, it was by anyone. So when I went into a marriage, in fact, my husband recently said to me, I could probably get my money back on this marriage because you're not the person that I signed up to be with. And luckily, he kind of likes the person that he's got now, but that's pretty much the story. I had to turn my life around completely because I didn't know how to ask for what I wanted, and I didn't know how to say no to other people. So huge for me. People pleasing has a huge codependence issue in it, or is one of the basics of codependence. So I'm really happy to be here and talking about it because it's a big one, and we all have it to a certain degree. How much it impacts your life is another story, but it's there, it's underlying in all of us, sometimes with everybody, sometimes with just those certain people or in those certain situations, but there's always an underlying people pleaser within all of us.
And so why do you think we do it? Do you think it's sort of like something that we're trained to do from our family or our tribal organization that we're in, or how do you think it comes into play?
I think for me, it comes from a very, very low sense of self-esteem or self-belief, and therefore the only way that I can get recognition, love, appreciation, acknowledgement is to do what I'm being asked to do. That's my own personal story, but that's what I see as a recurrent theme in many of my clients, presumably because I attract people very similar to myself. But for me, it was, the only time I got recognition was a pat on the back for being a good girl. And I was, to be a good girl, you did what you were told, you never said no, you didn't rock the boat, and therefore that's what I thought I had to do going into the big bad world in order to succeed, if you like.
What about you, Caroline?
Just reflecting back, I think it has a lot to do with the love we crave. And sometimes, I agree fully with Allison about low self-esteem, but maybe for me it started as a little girl. I wanted to please my parents. I wanted to be loved by my parents. Maybe to help them, heal them, and that security. If you're loved, you have the security. And of course, circumventing any disharmony. Sometimes it's sort of like you want a harmony around, so you'd rather not speak up, just not to get into conflict. And yeah, it adds on, it adds with your partner or sometimes with your children. Sometimes it's just saying no to your children is too much effort, so you just let them. And yeah, it's about standing up, about your energy level and finding that love within.
Because you hear this story a lot, you know, especially I think for women, you know, when they get to that age of, you know, probably, I don't know, 40 or whatever it is, where they realize that they don't even know who they are anymore, right? Or maybe they never did even discover themselves, and it's because they sort of wrapped their identity around what they did and how they served others, and just kind of, you know, because you hear that term doormat, you know, so very often. And I guess is it part of the Western culture, or is it worldwide?
I think it's a bit of both. I just read a beautiful book by Christiane Northrup about embracing or about the menopause, and she describes that we come into a next phase. Our early phase is that nurturing motherhood, you know, nurturing the family, nurturing the children. And then when we sort of step into the pre-menopause, into that, away from serving others, we come back into serving us. What do we want? We might be less patient with people around us. And I think you probably have it everywhere. Sometimes maybe in our society it just shows more because we can be free, we can have a career, and so you see when you're more of a pleaser.
What about you, Caroline, or Allison? What do you think?
In terms of is it worldwide? I think absolutely it is, because, you know, low self-esteem, desperate desire to be loved, that's, you know, that's worldwide. I don't think that's particularly a Western culture thing. We all want to belong, we all want to feel connected to each other, and, you know, and sometimes the way that we connect is just slightly, you know, is slightly off key, you know, when we are coming from a place. And I think it very much depends on, well, it depends on you as an individual, but it also depends on your, you know, your background, and how you were brought up, the way that you showed up in the world, if you like. You know, for me, very, very much the people pleasing came from, I believe, even before I was born. You know, my parents got pregnant, and I was born understanding that my mum didn't want me. I felt that. I always felt that so strongly, so that, you know, my desire from day one was to do what she wanted. She didn't want noise in the house. I didn't ever cry as a child. You know, as a baby, I was a silent baby. So, you know, I think I was born with it. But I was also born with that desperate desire to be loved. And, yeah, and therefore you perpetrate, what's the word I'm looking for, when you keep pushing forward. Yeah, perpetuate the same thing again and again and again. I learn how to please you because I know that I get something back. I don't understand that I can get so much more back if I stand up and I say, you know, let's do it my way. That took a lot of time. That actually took until my children turned up before I began to realize that my daughter could be the biggest bitch in the world, and I still loved and adored her absolutely without question. And that was a shock. Yeah, that was such a shock for me to make that realization and put those two things together. And that was, yeah, that was part of the change, at the beginning of the change in my own personal story, was, wow, you can behave like that and you can still be loved. I've missed something all these years.
I love how it's almost like you're saying there's like this feedback loop that kind of gets you into this idea of why we become people pleasers. And I think it's important to look at that and see what our true motivation behind people pleasing is, so that we can see if it's truly serving us, and then perhaps change that behavior. Because as most people live people pleasing, do you think it actually serves us? Or go ahead and jump in.
I think there is a certain point, you know, that, like all of these, you know, all of these things that we're given, all these characteristics we're given serve us. Of course they do. It's when they go out of balance, it's when they go out of kilter that they start getting us in trouble. And I think really, you know, for me, it kept me safe because it kept the equilibrium. It kept a certain amount of harmony in my childhood home. And I think that's probably the story for a lot of people. So it served at a certain point. But when it stopped serving, I carried on with it. And that's, you know, that's what I see in a lot of people, is we carry on because we don't realize that it's a tool that can be put down and we can pick something more useful up or more serving up along the way. So yeah, I think at a certain point, it definitely has a use, like all of these things, but it's learning that we can put it down and find something better further down the line.
So do you think it's a tool that we can use to sort of like form ourselves and form our own character? And then it's almost like a shell we can break out of later on?
I think it's a mask. It's another one of those masks that we carry. You know, I don't know about you, but I can pretty much guess that you have your various masks, or you did have your various masks before you started your journey. I am this, I am that. Who am I talking to? Which mask do I put on? And for me, the people pleasing was just an easy one. You know, whether it was at work, I was always the one that would take on this project or that project, no matter how busy I was with everything else. Yeah, I nearly lost my daughter because I couldn't say no. They needed somebody at work to run the department. Everyone else was sick or away or had left. And it didn't occur to me to put myself and my baby first. I said yes, and ended up, of course, in hospital in a serious state. And it was only because I didn't have the tools to say no. So I kind of lost the track of what you asked me. But yeah, it's a mask. I think that's it. It's something that we don't know how to get rid of. It's so much a part of who we are that it takes somebody to kind of cut across us and peel it away for us, or show us how to peel it off ourselves.
Yeah, I think you absolutely answered the question, because I think the idea of the mask is the same as sort of like, you know, creating that false persona while you almost sort of develop within that space. And then once you know who you are, then kind of coming out, but it can be harmful if you stay in that egg too long, right?
Poisonous.
So how can we, and maybe this would be the subject for the next part, and maybe it should be. Is there any final thoughts right now on why we are people pleasers before we go on to the next segment?
I think we feel it keeps us safe.
I love it. All righty. Well, this has been the end of the first part of People Pleasers right here with Project Positive Change with Pete Cossaboon, Caroline Palmy, and Allison Sara Reiner, visionaries of Project Positive Change. And check in for number 2.